Good morning, everybody. Hope you had a great weekend. It was a wet one here in Wichita. We got another inch of rain here, standing water in a lot of places. The mosquitoes will like it, but we're still about 3 inches behind on moisture. The corn and bean crop, dryland corn and bean crop, is in pretty good shape, except for that has been flooded with wet feet. So we've had about 6 inches of rain here over the last 4 weeks, and we're well on our way to recovery from the drought. Everybody's talking about El Nino coming along. That if the El Nino does kick in, and it's a strong one, it leads to warmer than normal winters in the grain belt, can lead to a colder than normal winter east and north of the Mississippi. And it leads to a lot of moisture across the bottom tier of states in the United States. And those states have been under drought for the last 3 years anyway, and the moisture will be welcome. Some places in Texas are down to less than 90 days of water. And so we'll take it. This is an interesting week. We got FOMC. No changes expected, but they will. It tends to sideline large institutions, just like non-farm payroll information does. They're willing to forego trade location to get reassurance or find out what the new fundamentals driving the market will be. We have Iraq. The United States has opened talks with Iran. Now that cannot be good for us over the long term, but Iran's willing to send troops in. They've already reportedly sent 3 brigades in. No one knows what they've sent in. We have Russia sending tanks at least back to the Ukrainian border, and the Ukraine's gas is supposed to be cut off today, but the gas will flow to the European Union. That will mollify and keep the European Union quiet, that their gas is not threatened. Nobody talks about how Russia protects Europe's gas lines and cuts it off to the Ukraine, and Russia's not in a position to fight a guerrilla war with the Ukraine if the Ukraine decides to do that, and I don't think they will. Plus, we have news today, so we have the biggest news focus today will be industrial production, expected up 0.6. Capacity utilization a little higher at 78.9. Empire Index less than last month at 15. It was 19 last month. And then we have the housing index, NAHB's housing index at 47. So this will be the #1 focus, industrial production. The initial reaction will be off of the Empire Index right here. And then the housing index will be supportive. So this will be 1, 2, 3 by the end of the day. But as we start out, this will hit the news first. This will hit the news second. And this will hit the news third and will probably be lost. They would like to see this number come in higher than forecast. They would like to see the industrial production come in higher than forecast, so on and so forth. And then we have long-term capital inflow, and last month was $4 billion. This month it's supposed to be $41 billion. This number is all over the map. It's hard to get a good read on it with Russia, China, and other countries making noise about the dollar is no longer the reserve currency. This one can go from a negative number to a $80 billion plus number over the course of the month. So it's so volatile, no one really pays much attention to it. So industrial production right here is what the market will key off of. I think if you put all this together with Iraq and the Ukraine, both of these would be supportive for financials. That equals a trading range with an up bias for the financials. So our first sell is going to be 15 to 19. Do like the long side a little better than the short side, but we are at resistance. Sell 2 will be 23 to 27. On the buy side, we broke out at 11. We're at 12.5 right now. The overnight session is 7, so we'll give it some room. We'll say 5 to 9 to get started. We have the Empire Manufacturing Index. We'll make an adjustment for that. And then 29 to 01 for buy 2. So we have news. We have international affairs. We have all sorts of stuff going this morning, and my guess is that'll put us in a trading range. Now, the buy zone for financials really might be 9 to 13. I'm hoping the Empire Index number comes in a little stronger than forecast, but if it doesn't, we'll have to raise our buy zone to 9 to 13. Okay, taking a look at the bond, the knob spread held, strengthened a little bit, a couple of 30 seconds. Went out at 11:12. It was at 11:16, I believe, this morning. Excuse me, we went out at 11:15. It was at 11:19, real early this morning, 5 a.m. So the long-term money is still betting on a weaker economy or some negative news internationally that will support the financials. And again, there's not a lot of magic in that. I mean, there's an old saying that if you want to sleep well at night, you go to sleep long crude futures and long treasury futures and short the indexes. And that's not an adage that'll make you money, but it just reflects the explosive movements in treasuries and crude oil is to the upside and to the downside in indexes. And that won't change. Okay, 7 to 11, sell 1. Sell 2, 15 to 19. On the buy side, we've got volume at 25. We're at 02. So I'm going to be a little more aggressive on the buy side on this one because of the knob spread widening. We'll make 25 to 29 buy 1 and then 17 to 21 for buy 2. Now, we always like our buy 2 areas better because it allows the professional traders to get stops outside the obvious support and resistance points. And most of the time markets move sideways. They're a little higher, a little lower, but essentially they're moving sideways. And that our number 2 points allow you to take advantage of the fact that most of the time markets are a little higher or a little lower, but don't break out or break down. Okay, gold up over the weekend. The tensions in Iraq, there is stories of the rebels entering a sector of Iraq, of Baghdad, and that should be expected because the city of Baghdad is laid out on tribal lines. You have Sunni neighborhoods and you have Shia neighborhoods, and these are corridors for the two factions to move and maneuver in. And if someone wants to open the door for the Sunnis, it would be in one of these Sunni corridors. But the idea of Sunnis, who are 20% of the population, being able to just march right into Baghdad and take it over is pretty remote. If Iran gets involved, I would say it's damn near impossible to do unless the Shias decide to revolt and kick over Malaki's government. He hasn't made very many friends. Those at the top in Iraq rarely make friends, though. It's their time to loot. It's their tribe's time for payback for all the bad years they suffered, and they tend to come in and place family members in positions of control and take every damn thing that they can get their hands on. So we had our breakout here in the 75-77. It's going to be our first little band of support. With tensions in the Ukraine and Iraq, I don't think this market can come back. The long side, like we said on Friday, and crude and gold are where you want to be overnight. You can short them during the day session, but getting short and maintaining a short position over the weekend requires more knowledge than we've got at our fingertips now. We have the attractor on a 180-day basis up here at 93, and we said if we broke through 78, 93 was a tradable target. So that's where the market is headed. We had volume at 84, and we really rejected prices over that, so we'll make 85, 87, sell 1, and then 90, 92 for sell 2. And we'll see what happens off the news. The news, if as forecast this morning, would not be supportive for gold. Would show a stronger than presently thought economy. More people back to work, higher tax revenues, sell gold. Now, all markets will be subject to news spikes off of what comes out of the Ukraine and what comes out of Iraq today. And there was a cartoon, there's been several cartoons out over the weekend when they announced that they were pulling people out of the embassy. And, you know, I almost think that thing took $5 billion to build. I mean, it was some ridiculous sum of money. But it is reminiscent of what happened in Saigon in '75. And there were, I mean, a couple, 3 cartoons that showed helicopters on top of our embassy in Baghdad. So not a favorable image if it does turn out to be the case. I mean, if I were a foreign nation out there, especially under Democrat administrations, I wouldn't count on the United States doing anything or keeping their words unless it was in their best interest to do such and expedient simultaneously. Okay, the euro's actually holding in pretty good. Russia told them that their gas supplies were intact and would be maintained. Like I said, if the Ukraine decides to go to the ground and fight Russia, and they really aren't in a position to do such, they can squawk and scream and they can skirmish around the edges, but they can't take Russia on head on. And their livelihood's dependent upon the free flow of natural gas to their country too. So probably a pretty good chance that the gas pipelines will remain intact and that the supplies to Europe will not be threatened more than raising the price, so Russia gets a bigger cut. Okay, we got a P. Support held. Russia's guaranteed their supply. The news, if as forecast in the United States, would be a small negative for the euro. Our economy is stronger than forecast if it comes in or perceived. So we got a seller in our 75 to 85 area. When we left on Friday, we were sellers at 50 plus or minus, and then at 75 plus or minus. So we did make it up to 60. So I mean, that's our sell band. So we'll make 60, 75, sell 1. And then we got 90 to 136 even for sell 2. On the buy side, we're still 15 to 25 like we were on the weekend. That's where our London is supporting it. And then 135 even plus or minus 5. Okay, with what's going on in Iraq, Iraq is a substantial supplier of crude oil in the world market. I think they're 2.5 million barrels a day. Don't hold me to that figure. I'll have to go back and check it. And the loss of their oil will definitely impact the price of crude. There was an article on Bloomberg talking about crude's headed for $116 a barrel. and the potential economic impact in the United States. Now, retail sales does include the price of gasoline, so the retail sales numbers that you see can actually look pretty robust with gasoline prices going up, but you don't want, for an economy, you don't want the cost of energy directly reflected in your retail sales. You'd rather see restaurants, foods, capital goods, consumer softs. So that's not really good news for the economy, but it can be masked. So again, I don't think anybody goes home short crude until this is resolved. The Bloomberg, it says we're going to 116. That would be within reach. So right now, 50 to 75 is sell 1. 108 would be sell 2. And on the buy side, we've got our 50 to 75 buy 1. And then 106 even, 106.25 for buy 2. Okay, I'm going to pause it here just for a second. I'll be back in a moment. The painters are coming, and Henry has gone nuts. Back in a few. Well, the broadcast may be punctuated with Henry's voice. He thinks he fancies himself a watchdog, and there's not much I can do about it. So bear with me. That's what doggies are for, to sound the alarm. Okay, to everybody's favorite contract, the E-mini. If war breaks out between Russia and the Ukraine, and if the situation deteriorates in Iraq, it will not be good for equities. When the announcement of war or fighting breaks out, equities usually get hit, but they also usually recover. So I don't see anything that's going on right now other would be any more than a temporary stumbling block for the E-mini. It's still strong. We're probably going to get a retest of the current highs before it comes in. The economic news really doesn't matter all that much anymore. In fact, the worse it is, the higher the market goes. I put an article up where the world's central banks, 400 government-related agencies, bureaus, or central banks, have bought $29 trillion worth of equities. And the Chinese government is the biggest purchaser of that. The second biggest is our Fed. And the reason for this is that no matter what's going on in your country, if the stock market is higher, a government can point to good times are just around the corner. Just stick with us a little bit longer. And so the ability to come in and manipulate stock markets, I mean, these governments are doing everything these days to maintain the status quo, to keep those who pay them to be in office happy, and to keep their general populations docile. And so the fact that 400 entities around the globe have put $29 trillion in the stock market shouldn't surprise anyone. We're a seller, like we said on Friday. As long as we stay below this 30-32 area, the market can sell. The low volume number is 14.5 on a 180-day basis. We break through that, then it's going to be the 1903, 1905 area. Right down here is going to be really, really good support. So we got B patterns. We have a B pattern from last Thursday. Getting short aggressively at 25 as you sell 1. And your sell 2s against this 30-32. The sell 2 is really a solid trade because you got great risk reward. Go through 32, we're wrong. I think the structure has one short in it, just like it did on Friday, but if we can't crack this 18 to 20 area, that's our buy 1 area with a caveat of a retest failure. And then buy 2 is going to be against the low volume number at 14.15. Fitz, I'd never made that comparison when markets are overbought. Perhaps governments feel wealthy enough to pull the trigger because of the value of the stock market account. Or they pull the trigger to manipulate the market and keep it high. What's the case? Okay, it'll take about 20 minutes to get everything done. Thanks for hanging in there with me with Henry. I'll be back up. Well, that's good, Chaz. A little bit of humor this morning. I'm glad you called them woofers. Later.